Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 630 and today's date is March 31st, 2015 and the title of this episode is The Economic Collapse is Getting Closer and the U.S. government central bankers are getting ready. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that Europe is feeling the effects of collapsing nations within the Eurozone. We see Greece, Cyprus, Portugal, France, Spain, and we see that these countries are continually taking on more debt. They have to impose austerity, and a lot of people are unemployed. And this is starting to spread throughout Europe. And we're seeing those other countries that weren't really affected are starting to feel it right now. And we see the Eurozone, where they're continually telling us that things are getting so much better, they're improving. Well, they're not. The unemployment rate for February is around 11.3%, which not only missed consensus, but was worse than the highest estimate. And when we look at this, and we see what's going on there, and they're trying to tell us that, yeah, unemployment has come down a little bit, I'm starting to feel that they're doing the same thing that the United States is doing. They might be taking a lesson from the BLS manipulated numbers, where basically what they're doing is they're artificially reducing the eligible labor force by eliminating those who have been out of a job for a long enough period to keep the unemployment numbers down. But even with this, the unemployment numbers are still very high. The youth unemployment in these countries, and we have to understand, the youth unemployment is the next generation. If you do not have the youth where they get a good job, where they save their money, they go out and buy retail goods, they save some more money, they go out and purchase a house. If you don't have this, the next wave, the next generation is going to be a disaster. And right now, youth unemployment under 25 is around 22.9%. In Greece and Spain, it is worse. Italy is not far behind. So the Eurozone is crashing at this point. It's been like this for many, many years, and it's getting worse. And as we know, from everywhere we're looking, the situation is not getting better. The central bankers, by giving these countries more and more debt, it's not helping. I mean, Greece is the perfect example. And we have to remember, they continually tell us, going all the way back to 2008, when they gave them the first tranche of debt, that everything is fine. Please, everyone, look this way. Because there's nothing to see here. They are in recovery. And we see, after all these years, 7 years later, nothing has changed. Well, it has changed. Greece is worse off now than they were back in 2008. And we see that this is spreading to other countries. I mean, the UK right now, they are feeling it just like every other country. We see that B&Q is going to close around 60 UK and Ireland stores. They're going to lay off about 3,000 jobs. Well, again, if everyone is doing fantastically, and everyone has a job like they're saying, and real estate prices are going up, and real estate sales are fantastic, and retail sales are improving, why do we see so many stores closing down and so many people getting laid off? I mean, we look at Canada, we look at UK now, we look here in the United States, we're seeing the same thing occur in all of these places. Here in the United States, what are we seeing? We're seeing more layoffs. Hallmark in Kansas City, 200 layoffs. Joss A. Bank, 122, their corporate headquarters. Palmer Manufacturing, 245 people. Bathcraft Closing Production Plant in North Carolina, 87 people, no job. Samson Resources, 196 people. Arrow Electronics, 150. JP Morgan Chase in Rochester, 300 people. CBC, 144 people. We are continually seeing more and more layoffs, more and more retail stores closing, more and more factories closing. Basically, what's happening right now, things are falling apart. And despite the gas prices ticking up right now, terrible economic data, dismal weather, the March consumer confidence exploded higher. People are looking out and they see spring on the way and winter is done. And we see it printed at 101.3, massively beating the expectations of 96.4. But don't get confused. Just because consumer confidence is up, it doesn't mean this is reality. This means it is hope. People are hoping the economy is going to get better. They're hoping they will find a new job. They're hoping that they can purchase a house. But when you look at what's going on, hope and reality are heading in two different directions. You can hope all you want, but the reality is the economy is collapsing. Now, Case-Shiller came out with their basically home prices, and they're saying that they have slipped in January following December's brief interlude, leaving the index down 4 of the last 5 months. Case-Shiller warns against rate hikes, putting pressure on potential home buyers and heightening the risk that any uptick in interest rates could be a major setback. Well, I'm going to say it's going to be a complete disaster. And they stated in their report, San Francisco reported the largest decrease of all 20 cities with a month-over-month decrease of negative 0.9%. Seattle and Washington, D.C. reported decreases of about negative 0.5%. So I decided to go out and take a look. And you can run this yourself. You can go onto Realtor.com, use the filters, and you can find this information out yourself. And they're trying to tell us that, prices are going up. There's a couple cities that they're coming down. And I'm looking at what's going on right here, right now. And what I see is the same thing happening prior to 2008. We've hit the top of the price mark. The corporate media is out there telling everyone this is the time to buy. We need everyone in before this comes crumbling down. Just like the stock market, just like the student loan market, just like the auto market. We're seeing the same thing. Now, when I went out to take a look, I went to Miami, I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, I went to San Francisco, and we can see from what has been going on, people are starting to reduce their prices. I mean, if we look in Miami right now, in Miami, there's about 23,000 listings, people trying to sell their homes. Out of the 23,000, we have almost 8,000 people that have reduced their prices already. Not once, but multiple times. And most of these homes, on average, are on the market 3 to 6 months. Out of the 23,000 listings, there's 2,300 foreclosures in Miami. In North Carolina, there are 5,500 listings. Now, a lot of these are new listings, and people think, oh, I'm going to put it on there and get the highest price, and I'm just going to wait. And as time goes on, what happens is people start reducing their prices. Right now, out of those 5,500, 1,500 homes have already started reducing prices. The question is, we're coming into the spring and summer. This is the hot time for real estate. Why would they start reducing prices? Because they have no traffic coming to their homes. They've had no offers for their home. We see in San Francisco 994 listings, 125 people. 125 of those listings have reduced their prices. Seattle, Washington, 1,050 listings, almost 300 have reduced their prices. And as we go along, we're going to see more and more of this, because if we are in a hot real estate market and we are heading into the spring, into the summer, and people are trying to convince you that real estate is hot right now, you got to get in to buy, there's bidding wars. No, there are no bidding wars, because people wouldn't be reducing their prices. I saw the same thing occur back in 2007, going into 2008, and it just gets worse. We've hit the top. We're coming down now. This is what's happening. And why do you think they're keeping the interest rates zero, negative? Because they know if these interest rates tick up at all, complete disaster in the real estate market. It will not survive. In Detroit, up to 17,000 Detroit area property owners have entered into payment plans hoping to avoid losing their homes to tax foreclosure. And that number most likely will increase as time goes on. Hundreds of applicants lined up before 7 a.m. Tuesday outside the Wayne County Treasurer's office in Detroit before the tax repayment plan deadline. People are struggling to get by. They're trying to hold on to their homes. They're doing whatever they possibly can. They're working 1, 2, 3 jobs just to make it. And we can see the next economic crash, it's on its way. It's coming. Because look what's happening here. Stores are closing down left and right. This is because people do not have the jobs. They don't have the money coming in to go out and spend. What other reason would a store close down? I can understand 1 or 2 in a certain area where they're not doing well. But when you close down all of them, and you get rid of all your people, and you just go out of business, that is a sign that the entire economy is contracting, that people aren't working. People aren't making the same money. And this is what we're seeing. We see coming out of the Economic Collapse blog, the next economic crash is dead ahead. There are only 2 times in history when the price of oil has fallen by more than $50 in a 6-month time period. One was just before the financial crisis in 2008, and the other is happening right now. We're seeing the same thing occur. As a result of crashing oil prices, we are witnessing oil rigs shut down in the United States at a blistering pace. In fact, almost half of all oil rigs in the U.S. have already shut down. Charles Hugh Smith is showing that new orders for consumer goods are falling at a rate not seen since the last recession. We have reports that the smart money is now pulling their money out of the stock market because they realize it's completely rigged, and we're getting confirmation from the SEC now, from the New York Post, who's running articles. Others are coming out saying, yeah, this entire thing is rigged. It makes no sense. And they're doing it for one reason and one reason only: to keep the illusion alive. There is nothing here that is real. It's a complete illusion to convince everyone that everything is fine. Go back to 2008. I mean, you think they're telling you the truth now, when back in 2008 they lied to you? And everyone, they're telling you that everything was fine, real estate market is fine, subprime is contained, don't worry, we're not forecasting a recession anytime soon. Why would you think they're telling you the truth now? They're doing the same exact thing as they did back in 2008. But this time, it is much, much worse. I mean, the infrastructure in the United States is crumbling apart because all of this created money is not going to the people, to the infrastructure in the United States. It's going to war, to other countries like Israel, Egypt, Ukraine, billions upon billions of dollars. And right now, here in the United States, the infrastructure, the public infrastructure, is falling apart. The World Economic Forum placed the United States 25th in infrastructure investment and 30th in air transportation. A new airport has not been constructed since Denver International in 1995. Additionally, a third of American roads require major repair, while 70,000 bridges have been deemed structurally deficient. Ports on both the Atlantic and Pacific coasts are having trouble as well. Many are scrambling to accommodate the new Panamax container ships, which will begin hauling freight through the Panama Canal, and Los Angeles and Long Beach, which manage about 40% of U.S. imports, are already deemed congested. It adds up to a pretty grim picture. Since the 60s, public spending on infrastructure as a share of GDP has dropped to around half the European average. The American Society of Civil Engineers says $3.6 trillion will have to be spent in the U.S. to catch up. And do you really think the U.S. government is going to do this at this point in time? No, the system is collapsing. The country, the actual infrastructure is collapsing. So we have the monetary system collapsing and the infrastructure collapsing. Because what they've been doing all these years have been sending money out to other countries. Regime change, war, spreading the debt in other areas, instead of taking a look inside the country and making this country great. And we can see that they're going to continually do this because they understand that their system, their entire private Western central bank system, is crumbling apart. The dollar is on its last legs, and they know this. This is why they're trying to get the war started so hard. They're pushing as hard as they possibly can. We see the allies saying, let me take a look at the dollar here. We see that they have trillions upon trillions of dollars worth of debt. 0% interest rates. The unemployment is completely rigged. It's not 5.5%. We see the BRIC system, and maybe we should join up with the Chinese Asian-led bank. And maybe we should hedge our bet and protect ourselves. Many of the countries have already signed on with it. Japan was going to sign on with it, but I guess the U.S. called them up and said, wait a minute. You can't sign up. I know we said we're going to, but we're going to try to infiltrate it. But no. Step back, step away, and it seems like Japan won't join the AIIB for the time being. That might change. We'll have to see how this goes. The other countries are all maneuvering and protecting themselves. We see the Russian sanctions are hurting Europe more so than Russia. Actually, Russia's improving at this point. The trade turnover between Russia and Italy is continuing to decrease as a result of economic sanctions against Russia and is comparable to a disaster. The trade turnover between the two countries decreased by 17% last year, while exports fell by 11.6%. And Italy, they can't afford this. Their system is collapsing. The most affected sectors are food and textile industries, where the amount of supplies to Russia decreased by 38%. The negative trend has continued in 2015 as well. In January, Italian product supplies to Russia dropped by 36.7%. We can see right now that Europe is struggling at this point. They're taking a huge, huge hit. And it's getting harder and harder for them to make it. And this is why these countries like France, like Greece, like Cyprus, they're all saying, you know something? We need to stop this. Maybe we shouldn't vote for sanctions. We need to get this food embargo lifted because it's hurting us. I mean, Greece is looking, to leave the euro and maybe slide on over to Russia because they will give them cheaper gas prices and they will lift the food embargo. We see other countries following. If Greece does this, other countries will follow, and the Eurozone will start to collapse. We see here in the United States, the NSA spying program is continuing. Actually, it's expanded. And we understand the Patriot Act comes up for renewal on June 1st. And we see that former NSA and CIA Director General Michael Hayden said the NSA will be forced to fold its tent on its phone data collection program without reauthorization by Congress. Well, you know what? There's no need to reauthorize the Patriot Act. We've seen how it works. We've seen how they use it to violate our Fourth Amendment. And there's no reason to reauthorize it when it comes due. And like I said before, there are two congressmen, Thomas Massie and Mark Pocan. They are out there pushing Bill H.R. 1466. This is the Surveillance State Repeal Act. They're trying to repeal the Patriot Act. The legislation not only seeks to overturn the Patriot Act, but the FISA Amendments Act, which has been the source to which the National Security Agency has pointed to justify its unconstitutional warrantless spying on American citizens. Now, even though the Patriot Act most likely, hopefully, will be removed, I don't think the NSA is going to stop spying. I think they're going to continue. I think they're going to do it covertly, so no one knows what is going on. Just like they were doing before. No one really knew. Until it came out. Until Edward Snowden came out and said, yeah, this is what's going on. Because, as you know, when the collapse hits, they need to know what everyone is doing, where they are, who they're communicating with, what transactions they make. And again, they use the spying for many different agendas. They use it to blackmail judges. They use it to blackmail government officials. They use it to spy on Americans. They use it to steal patents, to steal financial information. They use it quite a bit. And again, just because they come out with the Patriot Act does not mean it overrides the Fourth Amendment. Nothing overrides our rights. It's the top law. It cannot be overwritten. It doesn't work that way. And this is why they continually try to write all these laws to try to infringe upon it. Because they know they can't write something that completely stops it completely. They have to try to, chip at it from all different sides to convince people, yeah, look, see, you don't have these rights anymore. But guess what? All of it is in violation. And there's no reason for any American to follow any of these laws that they're creating. Now, out in Nigeria, we understand the President Goodluck Jonathan is currently the president, and they just had elections. And we understand that the U.S. government placed troops in Ghana ready to go into Nigeria at any moment to evacuate. At least that's what they're telling us. But we can see that they might be trying to maneuver and bring soldiers into the country, because what we're seeing right now is the President Goodluck Jonathan concedes defeat. The opposition has won. And we're going to have to see where this leads us, because you have to remember, the United States government central bankers have been trying to get into Nigeria. They've been using Boko Haram. They've been using terror in the country. Nigeria has a very close relationship with China. The Nigerian government said absolutely not. We do not want the United States in there. And they desperately want to get into Nigeria. And we can see that everything is standing by. They also have troops in Chad, which is right on the border of Nigeria. And we can see they're all ready to go and swoop into the country at a moment's notice. Now, in Venezuela, we understand the President of the United States said that Venezuela is a national security threat. And we can see that Venezuela right now has about 5 million people across the country that have signed a petition demanding that the U.S. President repeals his executive order that declared Venezuela a security threat. They're out there saying we have collected more than 5 million signatures, and we want to call on the Venezuelan people to keep on going until we reach 10 million. This is coming from Jorge Rodriguez, the mayor of Caracas. Our intention is to deliver the collected signatures to the President of the United States as clear evidence that the people of Venezuela reject the crude interference in our internal affairs. The people there are speaking back and showing everyone, listen, we are not a threat. And we know why the U.S. government central bankers said Venezuela is a threat, because they've tried regime change, but they're going to continue to do. They want to get into Venezuela because they have a huge amount of oil. They just want to get their hands on it and sell it using the US dollar. They love to set up a central bank and spread the debt. But guess what? Venezuela, close relationship to China and Russia, and it doesn't seem that the regime change is working. It doesn't seem like anything that they're doing is actually making it where they can take over the country. Just because they try a regime change doesn't mean it works. Look at Ukraine. They didn't expect what happened in Ukraine. The people are fighting back. They did it in the Middle East and they said, oh, okay, look, it was pretty easy. We did it. I mean, they've done it going back much further in time and they kept on doing it, but now all the people are starting to catch on. The countries are starting to catch on and they're starting to realize what the U.S. is actually doing. Now, we see that Japan has extended their sanctions against North Korea for 2 more years. We see out in Ukraine, Gazprom yesterday, which I reported on, they were trying to talk to Putin to say, listen, let's give him 3 more months of this reduced winter price of the gas. And Putin today came out and said, yes, he agreed to extend Ukraine's gas discount until the end of June. And we can see that Ukraine still owes Russia about $2.4 billion. And what they're doing right now is paying for gas each week, hoping to remove themselves from Russia and hopefully get their gas supplies from Europe. And this is what they've been trying to do. Now, Poland, they are going to train Ukrainian military instructors under the NATO program. Wow, Ukraine belongs to NATO? They joined up? No, they did not. But it seems it doesn't matter. The training will be held under the NATO Defense Education Enhancement Program, a Ukraine program organized with several member states of the bloc. Poland's Defense Ministry spokesman said the first course of training will be held in June, the next in September and October. Ukrainian side said about 50 troops will be participating in the program. The program goal is to bring Ukrainian military education in line with NATO standards. Training costs will be covered by NATO and the Poland Defense Ministry. And I'm sure the people in Poland are very happy with this. And we can see right now that there are people out there saying this is ridiculous. Why are we paying for all of this? And we understand the Minsk II agreement is going absolutely nowhere at this point. Ukraine is stalling. And we know why. Because they're getting ready for a major offensive. Now, during this ceasefire time, this peaceful time, we see they implemented a draft. They're going to recruit about 21,000 people in the spring. How interesting. If they're talking about a ceasefire and peace and removing the heavy artillery and going along with the Minsk agreement, why are they drafting 21,000 people by the spring? Out of those 21,000, 12,000 recruits will join the Ukraine security forces, 7,000 will join the National Guard, and 1,000 recruits will join the Special Transportation Services. The spring draft is going to cost about $84 million to do this. This does not sound like they're going along with the Minsk II agreements. And we know they're not. We see the activities near the disengagement line dividing the Ukraine army position and the militia forces of the self-proclaimed Lugansk People's Republic is showing that Kiev right now, the Kiev army, is preparing for a new active phase of war. The Ukrainian army has reinforced its group of troops near the populated localities, and we see that Ukraine had redeployed armored vehicles, including tanks, to those areas. This does not sound like they're getting ready to have a ceasefire and to continue with the ceasefire and to have peace. They have the draft in place. They have the tanks rolling in from the United States government central bankers. They're bringing the heavy artillery back up to the line. They are not ready to stop and have peace, because these central bankers did not get what they're paid for. They paid for the entire country of Ukraine. They need the production area of the southeast. They want Crimea because it has the port on the Black Sea. And they will not stop until they get this. We see Ukraine is out there, and it's very interesting. We've seen this here in the United States. They're going to give amnesty for those people who voluntarily surrender their firearms, ammunition, explosives, and other weapons to the police. There'll be no punishment if you hand in everything you have between April 1st and the 30th. Once that period is over, they are going to go door to door and they will hunt down the rest of the weapons. And you have to remember, the U.S. government central bankers, they are the puppet masters in this country. So you can see what they're doing there. They want to do the same thing here in the United States. And we've had these buyback programs where they said, come in, drop your weapons off. We won't ask any questions. We'll give you amnesty. And we can see right now, why would they be doing this at this point in time? Because they realize they're going to push this war. And they're going to push the offensive very hard. They're not going to stop this time. They need to take the weapons away from the people because the people are saying, you know something? Poroshenko, Yatsenyuk, we shouldn't have these people in power anymore, and they're afraid of the people rising up and removing them. And this is why they're doing it. And we can see right now, if they're telling everyone that the southeastern people are terrorists, wouldn't it make more sense for the people in Ukraine to keep the weapons to protect themselves against those terrorist people? Well, that would make sense. But again, they aren't terrorists. They're the Ukrainian people that live there, who didn't agree with the puppet government and who are fighting back, who want freedom, who want democracy, who want to be separate and apart from a dictatorship. But again, the U.S. is not backing them whatsoever. They are backing the government and coming down hard on the people. Again, like I've said in the past, once the United States government has a puppet government in place, everyone that opposes it is a terrorist. If they're trying to have regime change, they're behind the people. They want freedom. They want democracy. They should be allowed to overthrow their government. And we've seen this time and time again. Now, out in Ukraine, Pepe Escobar decided to go into the East Ukraine, the southeastern portion, and take a look around. And he reported on what he saw. And he wrote, I saw whole families holed up in fully decorated Soviet-era bomb shelters, too afraid to go out even by daylight, traumatized by the bombings orchestrated by Kiev's anti-terrorist operations. I saw a modern, hard-working industrial city at least half empty and partially destroyed, but not bent, able to survive by their guts and guile with a little help from Russian humanitarian convoys. I saw checkpoints like I was back in Baghdad during the Patriot surge. I saw the main trauma doctor at the key Donetsk hospital confirm there has been no Red Cross and no international humanitarian help to the people of Donetsk. I did not see the rows and rows of Russian tanks and soldiers that the current NATO general sees every day in his exalted dreams, invading Ukraine over and over again. So basically, we have an eyewitness who went into Ukraine, and he is not seeing what NATO is saying, and he's seeing a devastated area where it has been shelled, bombed, destroyed. We also know that the U.S. and the Ukrainian government people are going to be flying in a Boeing plane over Russia because they are allowed to, using the Open Sky Treaty. And they're going to do this coming up very soon. And what are they going to see? Just like they saw every single other time, no troop buildup. No 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 soldiers and tanks. They're not going to see any of that because it is not happening. We see the Pentagon right now. They're testing new drones that can launch from the ocean floor. The agency is trying to approach military technology needs with a new perspective, having focused primarily on assets for ground wars in the past 14 years. The UFP program will therefore be one of the several other research projects DARPA will focus on as a means of revolutionizing the U.S. military's maritime strategy. What DARPA envisions is having a number of drones planted on the ocean floor in locations where geopolitical hostility is possible, readily available for launch whenever needed. The drone housing sensors and non-lethal weapons and eventually lethal weapons would lie dormant in the ocean floors until it is remotely triggered by the U.S. Navy and sent to the surface for use. And we can see they're doing all of this at this point because they're getting ready for war. We've seen military assets being moved all over the world into Eastern Europe to build a wall and contain Russia. We see the pivot to Asia, pivot to the Pacific, I should say, which encircles China. China is contained. Military assets now are being brought into the Middle East because we have the battle in Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, and eventually Syria, then Iran. We see military assets in Africa. They are preparing for World War III. We see already in Yemen, in the Middle East, the U.S.-backed Saudi forces are hitting the Houthi people. And the Houthi people, it has not slowed their advance. They're continuing their advance against the key southern city of Aden. We see that Saudi airstrikes hit Yemen refugee camps. Why would they do this? Because they don't care. What they want is the puppet government back in Yemen. Remember, once the U.S. government central bankers has a puppet government in power, anyone who does not agree with that government, they are considered terrorists. They're considered they don't have the right to overthrow the government. And this is what we're seeing in Yemen right now. Of course, Saudi officials denied responsibility for killing the people in the refugee camp, but Doctors Without Borders and other aid groups confirmed that the attack was indeed an airstrike. And, of course, they try to blame this on the Houthi people, and we know they're not going to go ahead and hit their own people who are in these camps. It makes no sense whatsoever. Yemen has received an affirmative response for a request to send ground troops to the country in support of the decisive storm operation against the Houthi people. Ousted Yemeni President Hadi, and of course, as you know, the leaders of all these countries seem to take refuge outside of the country when the people inside the country are fighting. And of course, he's all out there, talking like he's in control, which he is not. He's out there saying that he will not negotiate with the Houthi rebels until they surrender and lay down their arms. The president's position is clear: as I hide in other countries, I will not negotiate. Well, I'm sorry, but you don't have control of the country anymore. The people in the country have control of it. And we can see that the U.S., the Saudi forces, and the other coalition forces, which are taking orders from the U.S., their job is to go in there and restore the puppet government. Now, we're getting word that in Libya, gas is being smuggled out, or should I just say sold, not using the dollar. But of course, the corporate media is making it seem like gas is being smuggled out and all the money that they're getting is being used to pay for terrorism inside the country. No, basically what's happening is the people inside Libya are selling the oil not using the US dollar, and they're keeping the money. Whatever they sell it for, they're using the yuan, rubles, gold, whatever it is, they're keeping it because they're in control of the country. The sales, they're saying, add up to about 12 million of petroleum products are being smuggled out of the country each month on average. Security Council's Libyan Sanction Committee suggested that an international maritime police force should monitor the Libyan waters. Well, we already have other countries that are stopping, like Italy, and trying to stop the sale of oil. And like I said, once the people started selling oil in Libya, guess what's going to happen? They're going to go into this country. We have already seen calls from the puppet government where they're saying, yes, we want the same thing that's happening in Yemen. We want it in Libya. And eventually this will spread everywhere, because what's happening right now is the Pentagon agrees with the Arab League plan to create a joint military force to help out in the region. So we see like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar are going to join forces and go after these countries that are trying to get rid of their puppet masters. And we can see at this time, the United States can't really join in because the authorization for war has not been passed. And when things go south and things start to get worse, all of a sudden we will see a major push with an event or something else that will occur to help get that bill through and passed. Now, we see that Canada, after they have voted 142 to 129 in favor of a motion which extended the mission for up to a full year, they are ready to bomb Syria. They're ready to go in with their planes and hit targets in Syria. Of course, it's not going to be the Islamic State. It's going to be the infrastructure of Syria. So we can see Canada, welcome to the fight in Syria. And what's happening there is all the coalition forces, the U.S., they're going in there, expanding the territory of the Islamic State, destroying the infrastructure, because their main mission, their main goal, which it's always been, is to go after Assad. And this is exactly what they're doing right now. And they've been building up the case of why we need to go into Syria and get rid of Assad. They tried the chlorine gas. They tried the photos from Caesar saying that Assad has been torturing his people, and all of these things have been debunked because Caesar wasn't actually in the places where the supposed torture was taking place. He took pictures of people in a hospital. Well, these people could have been tortured, or they could have been in battle. And all he did was show pictures of what happened afterwards. No proof of anything else. The chlorine gas, the Islamic State, the proxy army for the United States government central bankers. They've been using it, and they're trying to pin it on Assad. Why would Assad do this at this point in time? What would be his motive to hit his own people? He wouldn't have a motive to do that. It makes no sense. The people are on his side. The people voted for him by a landslide. And we know the United States government central bankers have used this trick before, back in August of 2013 when they blamed Assad using sarin gas. And we come to find out, no, it was the Free Syrian Army. The gas canisters were found in the cave that the Free Syrian Army held. We know the trajectory of the missile they used came from their area, and that was from MIT. So we can tell right now they're trying to build the case once again. And of course, they're saying that the Syrian Electronic Army has hacked into the control system of 5 web hosting services, claiming they are supporting terrorist websites. The Syrian Electronic Army, which has previously been linked to the Assad regime, which we know that there's no reason for Assad to cyber attack anything like this whatsoever. This is an inside job. It's a false flag where they're using, most likely, the NSA, malware, cyber attack tactics, and blaming it on Syria at this point. They hit hosts like Bluehost, JustHost, HostGator, FastDomain, and HostMonster. That's very strange. Most of these hosts host alternative media. I wonder if that's really what the U.S. government was going after. The hackers were able to gain access to the company's control systems, which would have allowed them to cause a huge amount of damage. However, it is unclear just how damage was caused. Now, I have HostGator. They have given me no notice whatsoever. I haven't noticed anything whatsoever. And I don't know if this is a true story or not, because there's been no message at all to me. Now, something strange happened. The residents of about a dozen U.S. states received a scare when an anonymous message rolled across their TV screens announcing an emergency alert, with the names of their states without any explanation or further information. It was a test of the emergency alert system, began shortly before noon on Monday, and was seen by millions of television viewers in Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. And we can see there are other people saying that, yes, I was in California and I actually saw it. And we have to go back in time. Back to July 15th of 2014, I reported on episode 416 that the FCC was working on a new alert system which gives the president special code for emergency messages. I'm wondering if it's complete and they're testing it out at this point. Because as we know, Jade Helm will be starting in July. It'll be running all the way to September. Now, is it going to happen during this period? No, most likely it won't. This is a drill to get people convinced that these drills are going to happen more often, get people used to it. There is a slight chance that something might happen because we've seen this before, like in 9/11 when FEMA came in and they were having some type of drill at the same exact time, and the next day, guess what happened? The planes hit the towers. There was also a Air Force drill going on at the same time. So we really can't rule this out. So now we have the emergency broadcast system going live. We know the president was going to have a special code where he'd be able to get on every single network at the same exact time to preach a message. And this is all happening all at the same time. The government is getting prepared for this major collapse. This is why we're seeing all of this, and this is why it's being ramped up at this time. They are getting prepared for what is coming. They've been doing this for quite a while. And you can see as time goes on, they're continually expanding this. And they're doing it more out in the open. Because they want everyone to know that, yeah, we're going to control the situation no matter what. And they're trying to get people used to it so they're surprised for when it happens. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.